Thank you, everyone, for joining me week after week for these live internet studies. My name is Ariel ben-Lyman HaNaviy, and this is a study on Matthew chapter 9, 14 through 17, entitled Judaism v. Christianity, or the long title is, Are Judaism and Christianity Incompatible with One Another? And we're having this entertaining discussion about the idea that Judaism has been replaced by Christianity. Replacement theology, supersessionism. We've looked at some different sources, different Christian sources, and trying to ascertain on a commentary kind of on this particular passage that I'm going to read here that you can see on your screen right now. Was Yeshua really entertaining this idea that the old and the new were incompatible, that the old had its time and was on its way out and needed to be replaced by this new? And when we say old and new, you can kind of fill in the blank there. You can say old and new people groups. You can say old and new standards of living, or you can say old and new religion, or old and new standards, or, whatever. Old and new covenants, if that word fits. So let's read the passage that is the focal point, which is out of Matthew. You could read this as well in Mark and Luke, but I think, if I'm correct, if I remember, it's absent from John. All right, let's read the story. There are three main elements to the story that Yeshua tells. There's a fasting element, there's a garment and patch element, and then there's a wine and wineskins element. And most commentators think that they all fit together. It's repetition, but they're all teaching the same principle. Some see differing points along the way, kind of building on it. So we can go either way with that. I'm not really that particular. But here's what Yeshua has to say. This is taken from Matthew, the Matthew version, ESV. Starting in verse 14, Yeshua says, the author writes, Then the disciples of John came to him, speaking of Yeshua, saying, Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast? Verse 15, Yeshua said to them, Can the wedding guests mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. Verse 16, No one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made. And then verse 17, Neither is new wine put into old wine skins. If it is, the skins burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved. End quote. All right, so that's the passage in question. And again, we can see right away that Yeshua is definitely trying to teach some principle of there's an incompatibility issue. So I can't deny that fact. Our question for us, the task for us as Bible students living 2,000 years removed from this story, is to try and figure out what Yeshua's application is. Who is he referring to, or whom, or what? What's the object? What's being replaced? What's the old? What's the new? Where's the incompatibility issue? So what we've begun to do in my commentary that I have available on my website to this particular passage is look through a few different Christian authors and their perspective. And right now we're ready to continue our look at Pastor John MacArthur's perspective. And typical of most Christian pastors, they're going to take the perspective that the church has replaced Israel in God's scheme of things. And along with the replacement of Israel as a people group, the chosenness aspect, when we say replacement of people groups, the law of Moses is also going to have to find its way off to the side, being replaced with the law of Christ or something along that factor. Or you've heard Christians say the Old Testament has been replaced by the New Testament. The old is out, the new is in. Or the old covenant is out and the new covenant, right? I don't know of many Christians who would admit that they're part of the old covenant. Most will say I'm a New Testament Christian, or I'm a new covenant believer, or something like that. So those are the terms that are usually introduced. Here's what we looked last week, or 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry, we missed last week because of my personal illness. So let me back up just a few sentences into Pastor MacArthur's explanation of what he believes is an indictment against Judaism of the day. He believes that Yeshua is leveling this harsh rebuke against the Jewish leaders and their bankrupt religion. And if you read Matthew chapter 23, where Yeshua himself just takes the scribes and the Pharisees to task. It's this famous "Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, blah blah blah." You probably heard that sermon. You would get the impression that what Pastor MacArthur is teaching in his commentary here is just spot on. And I mentioned 2 weeks ago that there is a level of accuracy to his indictment against Judaism. However, the question, and I'll just tell you this right up front so that you can have this perspective: is it necessary to throw out the baby with the bathwater when we're talking about the corrupt leadership in Yeshua's day? Yes, the leaders were corrupt. Yes, the people had come to cloud the issue when it comes to what God's word really expects of them. The tradition had blinded them. The fences upon fences and interpretation upon interpretation had kind of pushed God's law off to the side in favor of their own personal perspectives, their own loopholes and things like that. But was God's word itself, the law of Moses and those standards that they represent, were those in a place where they too were so lacking that Yeshua had to say, let's hit the reset button, to kind of use today's pop culture references. Did we have to reboot the franchise, right? Let's go back and get all new actors and retell the story all over again, ditch all the original actors. Is that what's going on? All right, let's pick up my commentary.